So I think the more older I get and the more I realize is nothing's really permanent, and you make everything for what it is, a matter of perspective. Yes, you can. I always like to think you have two options to look at things. Be succumbed by it. You could always be succumbed by it for only 5 minutes and learn how to pick yourself back up. I like to always say there's nothing wrong with feeling how you feel, right? But don't let yourself think that's permanent. The good or bad, really, because nothing's really permanent. So just like as much as your good times come and go, so does your bad times. And there's no point in suppressing how you feel. So you can feel it. But I always say, because it's something so temporary, I like to just pick myself back up after I vented or, had a little bit of a scream here and there, and then carry on. And I think feeling and being strong are totally different things. I think you can be strong when you learn how to feel it and you learn how to adapt and you learn how to accept it. I think there's a big difference when you learn you feel it, but you don't learn how to tame it. I think there's a difference, because no one's asking you to stop feeling. They're just asking you to accept it openly. Think about it, a lot of times we lash out or act out is because we suppress it. We suppress a lot of things. When I was younger and when I was in school, call me traditional or not, but I always had to learn to suppress a lot of my feelings here and there. But it's so funny, as when I was younger, when I was a kid, that seemed more manly, I guess you could say, more masculine. But I realized that strength doesn't really come from that. Strength really comes from learning to take it for what it is, adapting to it, and learning to make it yours. Because again, suppressing rage and anger and any type of negative stress or feeling that you have never surmounts into anything good. You always end up blowing the bottle at the most wrong times, and that's when you start feeling regret. But again, it's what makes us human. No one's perfect. We're almost perfect, I reckon. I don't like to think people are perfect, because that doesn't really make sense. You could define perfect on your own terms, and I think that's what you should do. I think everyone's unique. That's why there's so much you can learn from. I go into a conversation openly with anyone, keeping my mind open, because I always think I can learn something from somebody, even my enemies. That's not to say I have enemies. Well, maybe I do, but I just don't know about it. I think your enemies are your biggest fans, really. I remember at a time, especially when I quit being an idol, I was succumbed by absolute rage, and my mind was just filled with spite and resentment. And honestly, if I was being completely honest, that's the amount of trauma and amount of things that I kept buried while I was doing an idol. I think it really broke me inside, because for me, I think that was the moment where I learned how to put a mask on, and I took so much shit in, I didn't know where I was burying that under, only to realize it turned into another beast of its own. So take it from me, if you don't learn how to look under the rug, it's going to be a little too late for you. When it surmounts into something big, it's going to turn into something, and you might not even know how to feel it. You might not even know how to accept it. So that's how I like to think. So again, when I was younger, I was very filled with spite, rage, and I never really forgave people, because I was always in spite because of what I thought people did to me. It's kind of like if you put like a dog in the wrong environment, and you take it, you starve it for so long, it doesn't become a broken dog in a weak way. It becomes a very spiteful dog. All it can ever think about is lashing out, or when they could lash out. That's what I like to think. I learned how to find something that was bigger than me, So, the outcome of that was DPR. And if I look back at it, I think it was so necessary. Every moment is quite necessary in your growth. You got to learn to be bad at something, and you got to learn to accept being bad at something for you to even remotely grow, right? So yeah, I think that's what I started learning to do. I started learning to not really look back at it and regret it and say, I wish that never happened to me. Because I think at a moment in time when I was in that, or you're pretty much clouded by that rage. So what can you really see? So you have to live through it. You have to go through experiences. I always say this. They say age isn't a number. You're right. It isn't a number, but it still doesn't. That still doesn't deny the fact that time is always ticking, and we don't stay here forever. So even accepting that idea, I think it's a beautiful thing. You learn to appreciate your moments more and more. It's so funny. A long time ago, if you were to tell me that this would be my life and this is how I would end up, more broken or not, I probably wouldn't know how to take that in. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe vice versa. Maybe I would have been extremely happy. So I like to think sometimes I'm thinking too much of what needs to be done and what I have to do, that I don't really learn to accept my moment in time right now. And it's such a hard thing to do. It's so easier said than done. Well, for me personally, I'm a bit of a feeler. I'm very sensitive. So if you're that type, you obviously know as soon as you walk into a room, if someone's off, if your other people's comfort is at the expense of your comfort. So you know what I mean by when you're a bit sensitive. For me, the longest time, I always thought because I was like that naturally, I just thought maybe that's what was fucking me over all the time. Maybe that's what was really taking from me. And I know at a certain point in time, I tried to renounce it. I tried to change it. I tried to, denounce it. I tried to rewire my brain, and because I hated that trait so much. I hated giving so much. I hated things being taken away from me constantly. So I thought always, like, the more I give, it's always gonna end up happening where I get pretty much taken away a lot more than what I think I gave. And I think that's where it starts becoming a thorn, when you start comparing it. When you start saying to yourself, have I not done enough for these people? Or have I not done too much, right? That's when you start getting a little toxic to yourself, and you blame the environment for it. I bet you 100%. I'll tell you, everyone, dreamers and non-dreamers, saying you appreciate somebody that is going out their way, even just once a month, can go a long way for people that love giving, because that's really all they need. It's so funny. All they ever really need is a thank you. And it's the hard, and I tell you why that's so hard it's because givers can't ask. They're really bad at asking. They're really bad at asking for help. They're really bad at asking for things. Again, it's you put yourself in a little box like that. So hey, take it from me, I'm still learning. And where I'm at right now in my mind is, I think I'm absolutely complacent with the idea that I love giving to people. And the thing is, the more I give, the more I accept this trait of mine, the more I realize it's bigger than me. Maybe it's because I've lived through it. Maybe it's because I've come of age. I'm talking as if I'm an old man. Well, maybe I am. But maybe I am. But maybe it's because I think I'm at a point where life is too short, just kind of worrying about all of that shit. I think it's so nonsense. I think that, God, I would hate to be at the start of my 40s and still feel some type of resentment or spitefulness for the life I've lived. I would hate that. I think I could feel happy now if even if I wanted to. I think it's a feeling, but sometimes you got to put yourself on it. you know, just like you put yourself on movies and snacks and sweets and all that, it's a feeling that you might rather think it's quite more easier to come by than you believe.